The November wind howled through the canyon of glass and steel that formed Chicago's loop as Robert Martinez stepped out of his black Audi at 6:42 a.m. At 63, his salt and pepper hair was perfectly combed despite the early hour, his charcoal suit pressed to perfection, habits ingrained from nearly 4 decades in corporate consulting. But lately, even his meticulous morning routine couldn't mask the exhaustion etched around his dark brown eyes. "Morning, Mr. Martinez," called Janet, the security guard at his building's entrance. "You're here earlier than usual." "Couldn't sleep," Robert replied, forcing a smile as he badged into the merchandise mart. The truth was, he'd been lying awake since 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, while Elena slept peacefully beside him, or pretended to sleep. These days, he could never tell which. His corner office on the 32nd floor offered a commanding view of the Chicago River, its dark waters reflecting the city lights like scattered diamonds. Robert had built Martinez and Associates from nothing, transforming it into one of the Midwest's premier supply chain consulting firms. Success had given him everything he'd dreamed of at 25, the Lincoln Park brownstone, financial security, respect in his industry. Everything except the one thing that mattered most, a marriage that felt real. The intercom buzzed. "Robert, Elena's online too," announced Sarah, his assistant of 15 years. Robert's stomach tightened as he picked up the phone. "Good morning." "Bobby," Eleanor's voice carried that artificially bright tone she'd been using lately. "I was thinking, why don't you take that Denver extension Morrison Industries offered? You've been working so hard on their project." Something cold settled in Robert's chest. 3 months ago, Eleanor would have protested any trip longer than a week. Now she was encouraging him to extend a 2-week business trip into 3 weeks. "I thought you'd want me home," he said carefully. "Thanksgiving is coming up." "Oh, we can celebrate when you get back. Besides, the money would be nice for the kitchen renovation." Robert gripped the phone tighter. They'd discussed the kitchen renovation exactly once, 6 months ago, and Elena had seemed uninterested then. "Since when do you care about renovating the kitchen?" A pause. "People change, Bobby. I've been thinking about a lot of things lately." After hanging up, Robert sat in silence, watching the morning commuters stream across the Wells Street Bridge like determined ants. 28 years of marriage, and he was only now realizing how little he understood the woman sharing his bed. That evening, Robert arrived home to their 3-story brownstone at 7:30 p.m. The house they'd purchased in 1998 sat on a tree-lined street where the annual Christmas decorations contest was taken seriously by everyone except Elena, who'd grown increasingly disinterested in their neighborhood traditions. "How was your day?" he called out, hanging his coat in the mahogany-paneled foyer. "Fine," came Elena's voice from the kitchen. He found her at the granite island, scrolling through her phone while picking at a salad. At 59, Elena remained striking, her auburn hair showing only hints of silver, her figure maintained through what she claimed were daily yoga sessions with Marcus. Marcus. The name had started appearing in conversations about 3 months ago. Marcus says this, and Marcus recommends that. At first, Robert had been pleased that Eleanor had found a fitness routine that made her happy. Now, he wondered. "Eleanor," Robert sat across from her. "We need to talk." She looked up, and for a moment he saw a flash of something. Fear. Guilt, before her expression smoothed into casual interest. "About what?" "About us. About how we barely talk anymore. About how you seem eager for me to travel more than I'm home." Elena set down her phone with deliberate care. "Robert, we've been married almost 30 years. People grow apart. It's natural." "Is it natural for you to stop wearing your wedding ring?" Elena's hand instinctively moved to her left ring finger, where a pale band of skin marked the absence of the 2-carat diamond Robert had placed there in 1995. "I told you, it's being resized. For 2 months. It's a complicated repair." Her voice carried an edge now. "Why are you interrogating me?" Robert studied his wife's face, the face he'd kissed on their wedding day, the face that had smiled at him through Elena's battle with breast cancer 8 years earlier, the face that now seemed like a beautiful mask hiding a stranger. "I'm not interrogating you. I'm trying to understand why my wife of 28 years seems like she'd rather I disappear." Elena's laugh was brittle. "Don't be dramatic, Bobby. You're overthinking things." That night, lying in their king-size bed with 2 feet of emotional distance between them, Robert made his decision. The next morning, before catching his flight to Denver, he would install a security camera in their bedroom. The November rain drummed against their bedroom windows as Robert listened to Elena's breathing beside him. Was she really asleep, or was she lying there planning something, planning someone? At 5 a.m., Robert slipped out of bed and drove to the Best Buy on North Clark Street. The teenage sales associate with purple hair and multiple ear piercings seemed amused by Robert's questions about wireless security cameras. "Looking to catch someone?" the kid asked, scanning the barcode on a high-definition wireless camera system. "Just want to keep an eye on things while I travel," Robert replied, though the words felt like broken glass in his throat. Back home, Elena was in the shower, her second one since yesterday evening, he noted. Robert carefully positioned the small camera behind the decorative succulent Elena had placed on her dresser last month. The plant's broad leaves provided perfect camouflage while allowing an unobstructed view of their entire bedroom. The camera's companion app loaded on his phone with surprising ease. A small red light blinked at him through the screen. Recording had begun. "Bobby," Eleanor's voice called from the bathroom. "Did you say something?" "Just talking to myself," he called back, his heart hammering against his ribs. An hour later, sitting in the departure lounge at O'Hare, Robert checked the camera feed one final time. Elena moved through their bedroom, getting dressed for work, unaware that her every movement was being transmitted to her husband's phone in real time. The irony wasn't lost on him. After 28 years of marriage, he was finally about to discover who his wife really was. Denver's skyline pierced the crystal-clear morning air as Robert's taxi wound through downtown toward the Brown Palace Hotel. The Morrison Industries project had brought him to Colorado's capital 4 times in the past 6 months, but this trip felt different. This time, he carried a weight that had nothing to do with quarterly reports and supply chain optimization. The Brown Palace, with its ornate Victorian lobby and towering atrium, had become Robert's second home during these extended consulting engagements. The familiar routine of checking in, reviewing project materials, and calling Elena to confirm his safe arrival felt hollow now, like going through the motions of a play where he'd forgotten his lines. "How was your flight?" Elena's voice through his iPhone speaker sounded genuinely concerned, which somehow made everything worse. "Smooth, no delays." Robert stood at his 9th-floor window, watching the bustling intersection of Broadway and Tremont below. "How was your day?" "Quiet. I'm thinking of having dinner with Carmen tonight. We haven't caught up in weeks." Carmen Rodriguez had been Elena's best friend since their Northwestern University days. If Elena was really having dinner with Carmen, the camera would show her leaving the house around 7 and returning late. If she was lying... "That sounds nice," Robert managed. "Tell her I said hello." "I will. Love you, Bobby." The words hung in the air after Elena disconnected. Did she still love him? Had she ever really loved him, or had their entire marriage been an elaborate performance? Robert threw himself into the Morrison project with desperate intensity. The company's distribution network was hemorrhaging money through inefficient routing protocols. a puzzle that normally would have captivated him. Now, analyzing freight patterns and inventory turnover felt like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. At 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 4:30 p.m. in Chicago, Robert's phone buzzed with a motion alert from the camera. His heart rate spiked as he opened the app, expecting to see Elena getting ready for her dinner with Carmen. Instead, the bedroom was empty. For the next 3 hours, Robert checked the feed obsessively. Elena appeared briefly at 6:15 p.m., changing into black jeans and a burgundy sweater, an outfit that looked more like preparation for a date than dinner with a longtime female friend. She left at 7:22 p.m., and the bedroom remained empty. Robert tried to focus on Morrison's quarterly inventory reports, but the numbers blurred together. At 9:45 p.m. Chicago time, his phone buzzed again. Motion detected. This time, when Robert opened the app, his world collapsed. Elena entered the bedroom, but she wasn't alone. The man with her was younger, probably early 40s, with thick dark hair and an athletic build that spoke of someone who actually did yoga instead of just talking about it. Robert recognized him immediately from Elena's Instagram posts. Marcus Chen, the yoga instructor who had supposedly transformed Elena's approach to fitness and wellness. Except Marcus wasn't behaving like a yoga instructor. Robert's hands trembled as he watched Elena laugh at something Marcus whispered in her ear. It was Elena's genuine laugh, the one Robert remembered from their early dating years, spontaneous and uninhibited. When had she stopped laughing like that with him? Marcus's hands found the hem of Elena's sweater, and Robert realized with sick clarity that he was about to witness the complete destruction of his marriage in high-definition video. For the next 47 minutes, Robert sat frozen in his Denver hotel room, watching his wife of 28 years make love to another man with a passion and tenderness that had vanished from their own relationship years ago. Elena touched Marcus's face with gentle reverence, whispered things that made him smile, moved with an enthusiasm that Robert hadn't seen since... when? Their anniversary 3 years ago. 5 years ago. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional, intimate in ways that cut deeper than Robert had imagined possible. This wasn't a casual affair or a moment of weakness. Elena was in love with Marcus Chen. When it was over, and Marcus had dressed and left through their back door, a door Robert now realized Elena had probably given him a key to, Robert sat in the darkness of his hotel room until dawn, watching the Denver skyline blur through tears he hadn't shed since his father's funeral 15 years earlier. At 6 a.m., Robert called David Goldstein, his attorney and former Northwestern roommate. David's sleepy voice answered after 4 rings. "Bobby, Christ, what time is it? Dave, I need to see you when I get back to Chicago. It's about Elena." A pause. David had been Robert's best man, had attended every anniversary dinner, had helped Robert through Elena's cancer scare. He knew their marriage as well as anyone. What happened? "I caught her cheating. I have video evidence, and Dave, I need to understand Illinois recording laws before I do anything stupid." The next morning, Robert called Morrison Industries and requested a meeting with their CEO, Patricia Morrison herself. Mr. Martinez. Patricia Morrison was a sharp-eyed woman in her mid-50s who had built her father's regional trucking company into a national logistics empire. "I was surprised to get your call. Is everything all right with the project?" Robert sat across from her in her corner office, looking out at the Front Range Mountains. "Patricia, I need to ask for something unusual. I know we discussed extending this project for another few weeks, but I need to keep that extension while actually returning to Chicago." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "That's unconventional. I'm dealing with a personal situation that requires me to be home, but I need certain people to believe I'm still traveling." Patricia studied Robert's face. In 6 months of working together, she'd learned to respect his judgment and discretion. This wouldn't involve anything illegal or unethical on Morrison's part. Nothing illegal. I'm simply gathering evidence for a divorce proceeding. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Mr. Martinez, in my experience, when good people ask for help with difficult situations, it's usually because someone has wronged them badly. Yes, ma'am. Then you'll have Morrison's full cooperation. Officially, you're here through the end of the month. Unofficially, handle your business at home. That afternoon, Robert booked a flight back to Chicago under his middle name, using a credit card Elena didn't know about. If she was going to play games, he'd learned the rules. But first, he was going to let the camera keep recording. Because if Elena thought she was safe to conduct her affair while her husband was in Denver, she was about to provide him with all the evidence he'd need to end their marriage on his terms. The truth, Robert was learning, had a way of revealing itself when people thought no one was watching. The February wind cut through downtown Chicago with the sharp edge of a scalpel as Robert Martinez sat in the mahogany-paneled conference room of Goldstein and Associates, watching his best friend and attorney David Goldstein review 3 months' worth of evidence that would destroy his marriage. "Jesus, Bobby," David muttered, scrolling through the detailed timeline Robert had meticulously constructed. "This is like watching a car crash in slow motion." Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of David's Michigan Avenue office, Lake Michigan stretched gray and endless under the winter sky. Robert had built his life in this city, had raised no children here but had roots that ran deep through nearly 3 decades of community involvement, charity work, and business relationships. Now he was about to sever half of those connections by exposing Elena's affair. "Walk me through Illinois recording laws one more time," Robert said, nursing his 3rd cup of coffee since arriving at 8 a.m. David leaned back in his leather chair, his silver hair catching the morning light. "Illinois is a 2-party consent state for audio recording, meaning all parties must consent to being recorded in conversations where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. But this is video only." "Exactly. And more importantly, it's video recording in your own home. Elena and Marcus had no reasonable expectation of privacy in your bedroom. It's the marital home, and you have every legal right to monitor it for security purposes." Robert nodded, though the legal technicalities felt cold and sterile compared to the emotional devastation of watching his wife fall in love with another man in real time. "There's something else you need to know," David continued, sliding a manila folder across the conference table. "I had my investigator do some checking on Marcus Chen." Robert opened the folder to find a comprehensive background report. Marcus Chen, age 42, married to Jennifer Chen for 12 years. 2 children, Emma, age 10, and David, age 8. Jennifer worked as a pediatric nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where Elena had received her cancer treatment. "He's married," Robert said quietly, "very married. His wife has no idea, and Bobby, there's more. Marcus isn't just a yoga instructor. He owns 3 studios across the North Side, has a net worth around $800,000. And here's the kicker. He's been conducting affairs with at least 2 other married clients over the past 5 years. Robert felt something cold settle in his stomach. Elena's not his first. Not even close. There's a pattern here. Wealthy, middle-aged women going through what we might charitably call life transitions. Marcus seems to specialize in them. Robert stared at Jennifer Chen's photo, a petite Asian woman with kind eyes, laughing at what appeared to be a family barbecue. Emma and David, their children, looked happy and secure in their father's arms. "Elena's not just destroying our marriage," Robert said. "She's helping this guy destroy his family." David nodded grimly. "The question is, what do you want to do about it?" Robert had been thinking about this question for weeks, ever since returning from Denver to continue his surveillance. Elena had no idea he was back in Chicago, staying at the Palmer House downtown, while she continued her affair in their Lincoln Park home. "I want to file for divorce, citing adultery," Robert said. "I want the video evidence entered into the court record, and I want it done in a way that ensures the truth comes out publicly. Bobby, you understand that once this goes into court filings, it becomes public record. Your friends, Elena's family, your business associates, everyone will know." Robert thought about Elena's sister Maria, whose wedding was scheduled for June. Elena was supposed to be maid of honor. He thought about their shared friends, couples they'd vacationed with, hosted dinner parties for, shared holidays with for decades. "She made her choice," Robert said finally. "She chose to lie to me every single day for months. She chose to bring another man into our bed while pretending to be a loving wife. She chose to encourage me to travel more so she could have more time with her lover." David made notes on his legal pad. "What about financial arrangements? Illinois is an equitable distribution state, not community property. I want her to get exactly what she's legally entitled to, nothing more. No alimony, no spousal support. She can have half the marital assets, but she'll earn every penny of her own income going forward. The adultery helps with that. Illinois courts can consider marital misconduct when determining support." Robert pulled out his phone and showed David the camera app. "She's there right now with him. She thinks I'm in Denver reviewing Morrison's Q4 projections." David looked at the timestamp. 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. She's not even trying to be discreet anymore. Why would she? As far as she knows, her husband is safely 2,000 miles away, buried in spreadsheets and supply chain analysis. David closed the evidence folder. "Robert, I have to ask you this directly, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Are you absolutely certain you want to go nuclear with this? Once we file these papers and enter this evidence, there's no going back. Your marriage is over, publicly and permanently." Robert stared out at Lake Michigan, remembering the day he and Elena had walked along Oak Street Beach during their engagement, planning their future together. They'd talked about children then, though Elena had never gotten pregnant despite years of trying. They'd talked about growing old together, traveling in retirement, maybe buying a place in Arizona for the winters. All of those dreams had died in a Denver hotel room 3 months ago. "She's already ended our marriage," Robert said. "She just hasn't had the courage to tell me. This way, she won't have to." David nodded and made more notes. "I'll prepare the filing. We'll request expedited proceedings based on the evidence. In Illinois, with clear proof of adultery, we can move quickly." "How quickly?" "With video evidence this comprehensive. 6 weeks, maybe 8. Robert felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief exactly, but a sense that he was finally taking action instead of being acted upon. "There's one more thing," David said. "Do you want to inform Jennifer Chen about her husband's affair?" Robert considered this. Jennifer Chen had done nothing wrong. She was living her life, caring for her children, trusting her husband, just as Robert had trusted Elena. "After the divorce is finalized," Robert said, "she deserves to know the truth, but I won't be responsible for destroying her family until I've finished dealing with mine." David gathered the evidence files. "I'll have the papers drawn up by Friday. We'll serve Elena next week." As Robert left David's office and walked back into the bitter Chicago wind, he realized that for the first time in months, he felt something approaching peace. The truth was going to come out. The lies were going to end. Elena would face the consequences of her choices. And if those consequences included public humiliation in a Cook County courtroom, well, she should have thought about that before she decided to film her betrayal in high-definition video. The camera, it turned out, never lied. The Cook County Courthouse at 50 West Washington stood like a monument to justice against the gray March sky. its limestone facade weathered by decades of Chicago winters and thousands of stories of human conflict. Robert Martinez straightened his navy tie as he climbed the broad steps, David Goldstein beside him, carrying a leather briefcase that contained 3 months of meticulously documented evidence. "Remember," David said quietly as they passed through security, "stay calm, stay focused, and let the evidence speak for itself." Inside courtroom 1504, the familiar chaos of family court was already underway. Lawyers huddled with clients, court reporters tested their machines, and bailiffs maintained order with the weary efficiency of people who'd seen every possible variation of human relationship drama. Elena sat at the defendant's table with her attorney, Miranda Walsh, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 50s who had built her reputation defending wealthy spouses in high-asset divorces. Elena had chosen her clothes carefully, a conservative navy suit, minimal jewelry, her auburn hair pulled back in a style that suggested vulnerability rather than the passion Robert had witnessed through his camera lens. She hadn't looked at him when he entered the courtroom. Judge Patricia Reynolds called the session to order at 9:30 a.m. sharp. At 58, Judge Reynolds had presided over Cook County Family Court for over 2 decades, and her reputation for cutting through emotional manipulation to reach legal facts was legendary. "This is the matter of Martinez versus Martinez," Judge Reynolds announced. "Mr. Goldstein, you may proceed with your opening statement." David stood, his silver hair and conservative grey suit projecting the authority that came from 30 years of family law practice. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of marital dissolution based on adultery. Mr. Martinez discovered his wife's ongoing affair and has documented evidence of her infidelity spanning several months." Miranda Walsh rose immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Goldstein is characterizing evidence that hasn't been presented or authenticated." Sustained. "Mr. Goldstein, stick to legal arguments." David nodded. "Your Honor, we will present clear, authenticated evidence of Mrs. Martinez's adultery, which under Illinois law provides grounds for divorce and affects the distribution of marital assets and spousal support." Judge Reynolds turned to Miranda Walsh. "Ms. Walsh, your response?" Miranda Walsh smoothed her jacket and faced the judge with the confidence of someone who'd salvaged dozens of seemingly hopeless cases. "Your Honor, my client has endured years of emotional neglect and abandonment, Mr. Martinez became so consumed with his business that he essentially abandoned his marital duties. Mrs. Martinez seeks equitable distribution of marital assets and reasonable spousal support as she rebuilds her life." Elena dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, the picture of a wronged wife seeking justice. Robert felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. Even here, in a court of law, Elena was performing, manipulating, crafting a narrative that painted her as the victim of his success rather than the architect of their marriage's destruction. "Mr. Goldstein," Judge Reynolds said, "present your evidence." David approached the court's media station and connected his tablet to the large display screen at the front of the courtroom. "Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A, security footage from the marital home, recorded during a period when Mr. Martinez was traveling for business." Elena's face went pale. She leaned toward Miranda Walsh, whispering urgently, but her attorney's expression suggested she was hearing about this evidence for the first time. "Your Honor," Miranda Walsh interrupted, "we haven't been provided with this evidence during discovery." "The evidence was obtained after discovery closed," David replied smoothly. "And under Illinois Rule 218, we're providing it now with proper authentication." Judge Reynolds reviewed the authentication documents David provided. "The evidence appears properly authenticated. You may proceed." David touched his tablet screen, and the courtroom's large display flickered to life, showing the familiar view of Robert and Elena's bedroom. The timestamp read November 15th, 8:47 p.m. This footage shows Mrs. Martinez entering the marital bedroom with Marcus Chen, a yoga instructor with whom she has been conducting an extramarital affair. The courtroom fell silent, except for the soft hum of the ventilation system. Court reporters stopped typing. The bailiff stood motionless. Even Judge Reynolds leaned forward, her expression shifting from routine attention to intense focus. Eleanor entered the frame, laughing at something the dark-haired man beside her had whispered. The intimacy between them was immediately obvious. This wasn't a chance encounter or a moment of weakness. This was a relationship. Miranda Walsh frantically whispered to Elena, whose face had progressed from pale to ashen. Marcus Chen, who had been subpoenaed as a witness and sat in the gallery's back row, looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. For 12 minutes, the unedited footage played. Elena's betrayal unfolded in excruciating detail, not just the physical intimacy, but the emotional connection that was somehow more painful to watch. She touched Marcus's face with a tenderness that had vanished from her interactions with Robert years earlier. She laughed with genuine joy. She was, clearly and undeniably, in love with this man. When Marcus left through the back door and Elena straightened the bedsheets with practiced efficiency, the footage ended. The silence in the courtroom stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Judge Reynolds finally spoke, her voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. "Mrs. Martinez, do you have any response to this evidence?" Elena couldn't speak. She stared at the blank screen where her affair had just been displayed for a room full of strangers, her carefully crafted narrative of victimhood crumbling into dust. "Your Honor," David continued, "we have additional footage spanning several months, showing a consistent pattern of infidelity. Mrs. Martinez conducted this affair in the marital home while encouraging Mr. Martinez to extend his business travel, effectively using his absence to facilitate her relationship with Mr. Chen." Miranda Walsh attempted damage control. "Your Honor, while this evidence is disturbing, it doesn't negate the years of emotional neglect my client endured." "Ms. Walsh," Judge Reynolds interrupted, "your client just perjured herself in my courtroom by claiming to be the victim of abandonment while conducting an extended affair in the marital home. I suggest you reconsider your strategy." David presented additional evidence, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between Elena and Marcus, credit card statements showing romantic dinners and hotel rooms, even Elena's own social media posts that, when cross-referenced with Robert's travel schedule, revealed a pattern of celebration whenever her husband left town. "Your Honor," David concluded, "Mr. Martinez requests dissolution of marriage based on adultery, denial of spousal support based on Mrs. Martinez's marital misconduct, and equitable distribution of marital assets." Judge Reynolds reviewed the evidence timeline, the authentication documents, and the legal precedents David had cited. Elena sat motionless beside her attorney, the fight completely drained out of her. "This evidence is comprehensive and compelling," Judge Reynolds said finally. "Mrs. Martinez, your claims of neglect and abandonment are contradicted by your own behavior, as documented in this footage. You conducted a deliberate extended affair while living as a married woman and accepting the financial support of your husband." The judge's gavel came down with finality. "Divorce granted to Mr. Martinez on grounds of adultery. Mrs. Martinez's request for spousal support is denied based on marital misconduct. Marital assets will be divided equally as required by Illinois law, but Mrs. Martinez will receive no ongoing financial support." As the courtroom cleared, Elena finally found her voice, but only to whisper desperately to Miranda Walsh about appeals that everyone in the room knew would be futile against video evidence of such clarity. Robert walked out of the courthouse into the crisp Chicago spring air, feeling lighter than he had in years. Behind him, Elena sat in the empty courtroom, finally understanding that actions have consequences, and that sometimes those consequences are captured in high-definition video and played back in rooms where truth matters more than performance. The footage that left the courtroom silent had done more than end a marriage. It had restored Robert's faith that in a world full of lies and manipulation, the truth still had the power to set things right. 6 months later, Robert would learn that Jennifer Chen had also filed for divorce after Marcus's affairs with multiple clients became public record through the court proceedings. Elena moved to Phoenix to live with her sister, leaving behind the social circle and community standing she'd destroyed with her choices. Robert kept the Lincoln Park brownstone, but removed the security camera that had revealed the truth. He didn't need to watch for lies anymore. He was finally free to build a life based on honesty, even if that life was lived alone. The truth, as it turned out, was worth more than any marriage built on deception.